The stars blurred past the observation window as 8-year-old Marcus Chun pressed his small hands against the cold glass. He had been traveling with the Kthari for 3 months now, ever since the colony ship accident that killed his parents. The insectoid aliens had promised to take him to a human settlement, but Marcus could sense something had changed. Captain Zextor's chittering voice echoed to the cargo bay where Marcus slept among supply crates. The translator device in his ear converted the sounds into words he could understand. Navigation, change course. We cannot afford delays. Marcus sat up on his thin sleeping mat. Through the doorway, he could see the bridge where several Kthari crew members gestured frantically at their displays. Their antennae twitched with agitation, and their voices rose in urgent clicks and hisses. Captain, the human child. One officer protested. The nearest human world is only 4 days away. Our home world is dying. Zextor snapped back. Every hour matters. Millions of our kind face extinction from the plague. One human child cannot delay our return. Marcus felt his stomach twist. He understood enough to know they were talking about him. He crept closer to the doorway, staying in the shadows. What do you propose? Another Kthari asked. Zextor pulled up a holographic display. A red planet rotated slowly in the air, covered with volcanic mountain ranges and dark oceans. Pyro 7. Atmosphere is breathable. Water sources available. We pass within range in 2 hours. That world is classified as dangerous. The indigenous species. The survival probability is 12%. Zextor interrupted. That is not zero. We will provide supplies. The child's fate will be in the hands of chance, as all life is. Marcus backed away from the door, his heart pounding. They were going to leave him, abandon him on some strange planet. He wanted to scream, to run, to demand they keep their promise. But he was one small human child on a ship full of aliens who had already made their decision. 2 hours later, Marcus stood in the cargo bay wearing a survival suit too large for his body. A Kthari crew member sealed him inside a cylindrical escape pod barely big enough for him to lie down in. Through the small window, he could see supply containers being loaded. Water rations, nutrient bars, a basic medical kit, a malfunctioning translator device, and an emergency beacon. The beacon will attract rescue vessels, the crew member explained, though his tone suggested he did not believe anyone would come. May fortune favor you, human child. The pod door hissed shut. Marcus felt the mechanical clamps release, and suddenly he was falling through space toward the red planet below. He pressed his face against the window and watched the Kthari ship's engines flare bright blue as it jumped away to hyperspace. They did not look back. The pod shook violently as it hit the atmosphere. Fire surrounded the small craft, and Marcus squeezed his eyes shut, certain he was going to die. But the heat shields held, and the emergency thrusters fired at the last moment. The pod crashed into rocky ground with a bone-jarring impact that knocked the air from his lungs. For several minutes, Marcus lay still, just breathing. He was alive. Then he heard it, a sound that made his blood run cold. A deep, rumbling growl that vibrated through the pod's metal walls. Through the window, Marcus saw a massive creature approaching. It walked on 4 legs, each one as thick as a tree trunk. Its body was covered in crimson scales that reflected the light of the setting sun. Wings folded against its back, and smoke drifted from its nostrils. The creature's head alone was larger than the entire escape pod. A dragon. Marcus was looking at a real dragon. The creature lowered its enormous head and sniffed at the pod. Its golden eyes, each the size of Marcus's head, studied him through the window. Then it opened its mouth, revealing rows of teeth like curved daggers. Marcus fumbled for the translator device. His fingers shook as he activated it, not knowing if it would even work on this creature. The device crackled and sparked. It was damaged from the crash. Random sounds burst from the speaker, squeaks, chirps, and high-pitched wails. The dragon's head jerked back. Its eyes widened. The sounds coming from the broken translator happened to match the distress calls of dragon hatchlings. The massive creature tilted its head, confusion replacing hunger in its gaze. It released a softer rumble, almost questioning. Then, carefully, it picked up the entire pod in its jaws and began walking toward the volcanic mountains in the distance. Marcus Chun had survived the fall. Now he had to survive what came next. The dragon carried Marcus's pod for miles across jagged volcanic rock before reaching a massive cave system. Inside, the temperature rose until sweat poured down Marcus's face. Through the window, he saw other dragons, dozens of them in various sizes and colors. Some tended to glowing eggs nestled in pools of lava. Others sharpened their claws on stone or groomed their scales. The Crimson Dragon, whose name Marcus would later learn was Scarif, set the pod down in a corner of her personal cave. She circled it several times, still confused by the crying sounds it made. Her own 3 hatchlings, each the size of a large dog, approached cautiously to investigate. Marcus knew he had to leave the pod eventually. The supplies would last maybe 2 weeks. The air recycler was already showing warning lights. With trembling hands, he unsealed the hatch and pushed it open. The heat hit him like a physical wall. The 3 hatchlings jumped back, hissing. Scarif moved between Marcus and her young, protective but curious. Marcus slowly climbed out, keeping his movements small and non-threatening. He was so tiny compared to them, barely reaching the knee joint of Scaritha's foreleg. An older, larger dragon entered the cave. Its scales were deep black with veins of gold running through them like cracks in cooling lava. This was Cravathor, the elder of the Emberclaw clan. The ancient dragon studied Marcus with intelligent eyes that had seen centuries pass. Cravathor released a series of growls and rumbles. Scarith responded with her own vocalizations, gesturing toward Marcus with her wing. The elder dragon moved closer, and Marcus forced himself to stand still even though every instinct screamed at him to run. Finally, Cravathor made a sound that seemed like a decision. He turned and left. Scarith relaxed slightly. Marcus had passed some kind of test, though he did not understand what. The first weeks were the hardest. Marcus learned to tolerate the heat by staying near the cave entrance where cooler air flowed in. He learned which pools of water were safe to drink and which were too sulfuric. He learned to recognize the different roars: hunger, anger, warning, greeting. The dragons watched him constantly, waiting to see if he would survive or become food. Marcus's turning point came during a hunt. The dragons had returned empty-clawed from chasing cave serpents, massive creatures that lived in the deepest tunnels and were too quick for dragonfire to catch. Marcus remembered the traps his father had taught him during survival training, using scrap metal from his pod and vines from the rare plants near water sources. He constructed a simple snare trap. The next day, he placed it in a tunnel where he had seen serpent tracks. That evening, the trap held a thrashing cave serpent, 12 feet long and deadly. Marcus used a sharp rock to kill it quickly. When the dragons returned, they found the human dragging a serpent twice the size toward the main cave. The entire clan gathered to witness this impossible sight. Cravathor approached and examined the trap mechanism. He rumbled thoughtfully, then did something unexpected. He nudged Marcus gently with his snout. It was a gesture of approval. From that day forward, Marcus was allowed to stay. He began teaching the dragons concepts they had never considered. He showed them how to use rocks and metal to cut things more precisely than claws could. He demonstrated fire control, using arranged stones to direct heat for cooking rather than just burning. He even created a basic map scratched into a cave wall, showing them the territory in a way their minds could suddenly grasp more clearly. In return, the dragons taught him their ways. Scarif showed him how to read the patterns of volcanic vents to predict eruptions. Her hatchlings, who had accepted him as a strange wingless sibling, taught him their language through play. Cravathor shared the history of the clans through long storytelling sessions where rumbles and roars painted pictures of ancient wars and old honors. 5 years passed. Marcus grew taller, stronger, hardened by the harsh world. His skin had darkened from constant exposure to volcanic heat and solar radiation. His hands were calloused from working stone and metal. He could speak the dragon language fluently, his throat having adapted to produce the necessary growls and rumbles. The dragons called him Scarmark, Small Firebringer. When Marcus turned 14, everything changed. A rival clan called the Shadowfang attacked during the fire season, when the volcanoes were most active. They wanted Emberclaw territory because it had the richest mineral pools for strengthening scales. The battle was brutal. Dragons clashed in the air and on the ground, fire illuminating the night sky. Marcus ran through the chaos, dragging wounded hatchlings to safety. He noticed something the dragons had not. A group of Shadowfawn warriors were flanking toward the nesting caves where the eggs lay undefended. Marcus sprinted ahead and found Scareth cornered by 3 enemy dragons. She was injured, blood seeping from wounds on her side. Without thinking, Marcus grabbed a metal spear he had crafted and ran toward the nearest lava tube. He knew these tunnels were unstable from recent seismic activity. Using all his strength, Marcus jammed the spear into a critical stress point in the rock ceiling. The tunnel groaned. Cracks spread like lightning across stone. Marcus screamed a warning in Draconic just as the ceiling collapsed, crushing 2 of the attacking dragons and driving the 3rd back in panic. Scareth stared at him in shock. This small human had just saved her life. When the battle ended and Emberclaw stood victorious, Cravathor called for a gathering. The elder dragon performed a ritual Marcus had only seen once before, the blood bonding. A small cut on Marcus's palm, a drop of dragon blood mixed with his own, and words spoken in the oldest Draconic tongue. Marcus was no longer just tolerated. He was clan. He was family. He was dragonkin. Tears streamed down his face as Scareth wrapped her wing gently around him, and for the first time since the Cthari had abandoned him, Marcus truly felt like he belonged somewhere. 9 more years passed on Pyros 7. Marcus was now 23 years old, though he barely recognized what he had become. Standing over 6 feet tall, his body was covered in scars from countless hunts and battles. His muscles were dense from living in heavy gravity. He wore clothing made from dragon hide and carried weapons forged in volcanic heat. When he looked at his reflection in still water, he saw someone who belonged more to this world than to humanity. The old escape pod had become a shrine of sorts in his cave. Marcus maintained it carefully, sometimes accessing its damaged computer system to read stored information about the galaxy he had left behind. One day, while repairing the long-range beacon, he accidentally activated it. The signal burst into space, crying out for rescue after 15 years of silence. 3 months later, a ship appeared in Pyro 7's orbit. Marcus stood on a mountain peak, watching the vessel descend. It was a small merchant craft, not Cthari design. Hope and fear mixed in his chest as a landing ramp extended. A female alien emerged, amphibious in appearance with blue-green skin and large, kind eyes. She wore a captain's uniform and held a translator device. "I am Captain Eula of the Veltoran Trade Fleet. We received a human distress signal. Are you Marcus Jin?" Marcus opened his mouth and realized he had not spoken human language in over a decade. His voice came out rough and strange. "I am Marcus." The words felt foreign on his tongue. Eula's eyes widened as she took in his appearance. The dragon-hide clothing, the primitive weapons, the way he stood like a predator ready to strike. "Your family registered you as lost 15 years ago. We can take you home, to a human colony." Marcus looked back at the mountains where Scareth and the clan waited. Home. The word had meant something different for so long. "I need information first, about those who left me here." Eula agreed to give him access to her ship's database. What Marcus discovered made his blood boil. The Cthari civilization had survived their plague. They had rebuilt and now held significant power in the Galactic Union. But more disturbing, they had filed claims on Pyros 7 for mining operations. The planet was listed as uninhabited in all official records. "They will destroy everything," Marcus whispered, staring at the mining proposals. Massive strip mining operations that would poison the water, collapse the cave systems, and kill the dragons through habitat destruction. Eula studied him carefully. If intelligent life exists here, the Sapient Species Protection Act would prevent mining, but you would need proof, documentation, witnesses. Marcus made his decision. "I will go with you, but I am not running away. I am going to stop them." Returning to civilization was harder than Marcus expected. Frontier Station Helios was a massive structure orbiting a trade world, filled with hundreds of alien species and thousands of humans. The noise overwhelmed him. The artificial lights hurt his eyes. The recycled air felt wrong in his lungs. People stared at him wherever he walked. this wild-looking human who moved like an animal and spoke common with a growling accent. He took work as a security guard at first, but his methods were too aggressive. He worked as a wilderness survival instructor, but frightened his students. Finally, he found employment with various groups who needed someone comfortable with violence and hardship. He saved every credit he earned. During his 3rd month on the station, Marcus was approached by a human woman in expensive business attire. Marcus-chan, I am Davina Ortega. I run a resource reclamation company. I have been watching you, and I have a proposal. They met in a private room. Davina laid out her plan. If we can prove Pyros 7 has intelligent indigenous life, the Cathari lose their mining rights. Your dragons could be protected. But more than that, you could establish legal guardianship as their representative. I can provide funding and legal support. In return, my company gets exclusive rights to sustainable resource extraction that does not harm the ecosystem. Marcus studied her carefully. She was not doing this from kindness. She smelled profit, but her goals aligned with his. I need more than legal support. I need ships, weapons, people. What are you planning? The Cathari will not give up easily, Marcus said. When we challenge their claim, they will respond with force. I need an army to defend my family. Davina smiled slowly. Now that is something I can work with. Marcus began recruiting within a week. He did not look for elite soldiers or wealthy adventurers. He looked for the abandoned, the forgotten, the left behind. Humans who had been betrayed by the system, who understood what it meant to be discarded. In a station bar, he found Sarah Kim, a former Union Marine with a dishonorably discharged status. She had refused orders to abandon colonists during a corporate dispute. Marcus sat across from her and spoke simply. I was 8 years old when aliens left to die on a planet full of monsters. Those monsters became my family. Now I am going to protect them. I need people who understand loyalty. Sarah looked at him for a long moment, then extended her hand. When do we start? Within 6 months, Marcus had assembled 300 volunteers, outcasts, idealists, and warriors who had nowhere else to go. He established a training facility on a barely habitable moon and began teaching them everything the dragons had taught him. But the hardest moment came when Marcus had to file the official petition with the Galactic Union. Because the Cathari delegate assigned to review his case was Captain Zextor, the same alien who had abandoned him 15 years ago. Their meeting was held in a sterile conference room. Zextor's insectoid features showed no recognition at first. Then his antennae twitched with realization. The human child. You survived. No thanks to you, Marcus said quietly. You proved my calculations were correct. Zextor replied without emotion. Your survival probability was 12%. You succeeded. This should please you. Marcus leaned forward, his scarred hands flat on the table. I am not here for your approval. I am here to stop you from destroying the beings who gave me life when you threw it away. Zextor's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. One human's attachment to primitive reptiles cannot override economic necessity. If you interfere with Cathari operations, there will be consequences. Marcus stood slowly. When he spoke, his voice carried the rumbling undertone of draconic language. Then let there be consequences. I am going home, and I am bringing an army. The moon designated Artemis. 9 was a desolate rock with barely enough atmosphere to breathe and gravity 1.4 times Earth standard. Perfect, Marcus thought as he surveyed the barren landscape. If his people could train here, they could survive anywhere. 300 humans stood in formation on the dusty ground, watching him with a mixture of curiosity and doubt. They came from everywhere. Failed colonies, bankrupt stations, discharged military units. Each one carried their own story of abandonment. Marcus walked along the lines, meeting their eyes. The Cathari think humans are weak, soft. They think we need perfect conditions to survive. They are wrong. I lived 15 years on a death world, and I am still here. You will learn what I learned. You will become what I became. The training began the next day. Marcus drove them mercilessly. 5-mile runs in heavy gravity, wearing weighted packs. Combat drills and environmental suits heated to mimic volcanic conditions. endurance tests that push bodies past their breaking points. Many wanted to quit in the first week. Some did. Sarah Kim became Marcus's second-in-command. She understood military structure better than he did, translating his dragon-learned tactics into formations humans could execute. "You are teaching them to think like a pack," she observed one evening, "not like a traditional unit." "Dragons do not fight in rigid lines," Marcus explained. "They flow like lava. They adapt. Each one supports the others, but each one can act independently. That is what we need." Dr. Alexei Volkov arrived in the second month. The exobiologist was thin and nervous, blacklisted by the scientific community for advocating that non-human species deserved equal rights. Marcus brought him to the workshop, where salvaged dragon scales and hide had been stored. "Can you work with this?" Marcus asked. Alexei's hands trembled as he touched the materials. "This is incredible. The molecular structure, the heat resistance alone." He looked up at Marcus. "What do you want to create?" "Armor. Weapons. Things that will let humans survive in dragon territory and fight beside them." For months, Alexei worked obsessively. He created what he called dragon mesh, flexible armor that mimicked the overlapping pattern of dragon scales. It could withstand temperatures that would melt standard combat gear. He developed weapons that used principles of focused heat rather than traditional ballistics. Spears with tips forged in the same volcanic process as dragons use to strengthen their claws. The engineer they called wrench-supervised ship modifications. Marcus had purchased 3 old colony transports that most people considered junk. "You want to take these into combat?" Wrench asked skeptically. "I do not want warships," Marcus said. "I want ships that can enter atmosphere, deploy troops rapidly, and survive hostile conditions. Make them functional, not pretty." Wrench grumbled but got to work. He reinforced the hulls with salvaged materials, upgraded the heat shields using Alexei's research, and installed weapon systems designed for defensive operations rather than offense. The 3 ships were renamed Emberclaw, Firebrand, and Storm Ascendant. 6 months into training, Marcus received word that the Galactic Union had scheduled a hearing on the Pyro's 7 situation. He would have to present proof that the dragons were sapient beings worthy of protection. If he failed, Kthari mining operations would begin immediately. That night, Marcus gathered everyone in the main facility. "The hearing is in 3 weeks. After that, we go to Pyro's 7. Some of you will meet creatures that your instincts will tell you to fear and kill. You must resist those instincts. The dragons are not monsters. They are people. Different people, but people nonetheless." A young recruit named Torres raised his hand. "How do we know they will accept us?" "You grew up with them. We are strangers." Marcus smiled slightly. "You will go with me. That makes you part of my pack. Dragons understand pack loyalty better than most humans do." The training intensified. Marcus taught them basic draconic phrases, greetings, warnings, signs of respect. He showed them how to read dragon body language, how to distinguish between aggressive displays and mere posturing. He drilled into them the importance of honor in dragon culture. "Never lie to a dragon," he instructed. "Never show cowardice in front of their young. Never waste food or resources. These things matter to them more than they matter to most humans. If you respect their ways, they will respect you." Sarah approached Marcus privately one evening. "What if the Kthari attacked before the hearing? What if they try to eliminate the evidence?" "Then we fight," Marcus said simply. "But we fight smart. We do not try to destroy them. We just need to hold long enough for the Union observers to see the truth." 2 weeks before departure, a message arrived from Davina Ortega. The Kthari had moved a mining fleet into Pyros, 7 orbit ahead of schedule. They were claiming the need to establish preliminary surveys, but intelligence suggested they were positioning for something more aggressive. Marcus called an emergency assembly. "The timeline has changed. We leave in 48 hours. The Kthari are already at Pyros 7, and they are not there to survey. They are there to eliminate any evidence that contradicts their claims." The room erupted in concerned voices. They were not ready. The ships were not fully tested. Half the equipment was still experimental. Marcus raised his hand for silence. "I was 8 years old and completely unprepared when I was dropped on that planet. I survived because I adapted quickly. You have trained for 6 months. You have each other. You have purpose. That is more than I had, and I am still here." He paused, letting his gaze sweep across every face. "In 2 days, we go to defend beings who cannot speak for themselves in the language of galactic law. We go to stand between corporate greed and innocent lives. We go to prove that being abandoned does not mean being defeated. Who stand with me?" Every hand rose. Every voice answered as one. Sarah stepped forward and clasped Marcus's forearm in the dragon greeting he had taught them. "The pack stand together." Marcus felt something unfamiliar in his chest. Pride mixed with fear. These people trusted him. They were willing to fly into danger because he had asked them to. The weight of that responsibility was heavier than anything he had carried on Pyro's 7 that night. Alone in his quarters, Marcus recorded a message on his old translator device. He spoke in Draconic, hoping somehow Scareth would sense his words across the stars. "Mother of my second birth, I am coming home. I am bringing my human pack to stand with the Dragon Clan. We will face fire together, as families should." 48 hours later, 3 battered colony ships lifted off from Artemis 9. Inside each vessel, 100 humans wore dragon-scale armor and carried weapons forged in the memory of volcanic fires. They did not look like an army. They looked like survivors. And that, Marcus knew, made them the most dangerous thing the Cathari would face. The 3 ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Pyro's 7 system. Through the viewport, Marcus saw his home planet, red and volcanic, beautiful in its savage way. But surrounding it were a dozen Cathari mining vessels, their cargo bays open and ready to begin extraction operations. A Union observation ship hung in neutral space, its sensors recording everything for the upcoming hearing. This was the audience that mattered. Whatever happened next would determine the fate of the dragons. The Cathari fleet commander's voice crackled over the communications channel. "Unidentified human vessels. You're entering a restricted corporate zone. Depart immediately or be removed by force." Marcus activated his transmitter, making sure the Union observers could hear every word. "This is Marcus Chun, legal representative of the indigenous population of Pyro 7, under the Sapient Species Protection Act. I am asserting their right to territorial sovereignty. You are the ones who must leave." "There is no indigenous population," the Cathari commander replied. "Only primitive animals." "Then you will not mind if I land and demonstrate otherwise," Marcus said. He cut the channel and turned to his pilots. "Take us down. All 3 ships. Stay in formation." The Cathari vessels moved to intercept, but they hesitated. The Union observers were watching, and attacking unarmed transports would look bad in the hearing. The 3 human ships dove into the atmosphere, heat shields glowing as they descended toward the Emberclaw territory. Dragons filled the sky before they even landed. Hundreds of them, circling the incoming ships with roars that shook the air. Marcus's crew tense, hands moving toward weapons. Sarah looked at Marcus with concern. "They look hostile." "They look curious," Marcus corrected. "Watch." The Emberclaw landed first, its boarding ramp extending. Marcus walked down alone, no weapons visible. The moment his boots touched volcanic rock, he dropped to one knee and placed his fist over his heart. The dragon gesture of respect and homecoming. An enormous crimson dragon pushed through the gathered crowd. Scareth had grown large in the years Marcus had been away, her scales deeper in color and marked with scars from battles. She approached slowly, her golden eyes studying him as if unable to believe what she saw. Marcus spoke in perfect Draconic, his voice carrying the rumbling undertones of the language. "Mother of my second birth, small firebringer returns. I bring Skypack to stand with Earthpack. Do you know me?" Scareth lowered her massive head until her snout nearly touched Marcus's face. She inhaled deeply, recognizing his scent beneath the smell of metal and space. Then she released a roar so powerful it echoed off the mountains. It was not a roar of anger, but of joy. The other dragons responded, their voices creating a thunderous chorus. Cravathor emerged from a nearby cave, now ancient beyond measure, his movement slow, but his eyes still sharp. The elder dragon approached and examined Marcus for a long moment before speaking in the deep, resonant tones of Old Draconic. The small flame returns as mountain fire, but he brings metal birds and strange packmates. What does this mean for the clan? Marcus gestured toward his ships where his 300 humans waited nervously. Sky clans wish to tear the mountain's bones and drink its blood. They say dragons are not people, only beasts. I have brought witnesses and warriors to prove them wrong. Will the clan allow my sky pack to walk among us? Kravathor considered this carefully. Then he turned to the gathered dragons and released a series of commanding growls. The dragons parted, creating a path. The elder turned back to Marcus and spoke words that made Marcus's eyes sting with emotion. Any pack that stands with Scarmark stands with Emberclaw. Let them come forward. Over the next 3 days, Marcus orchestrated a demonstration for the Union observers that watched from orbit. Dragons displayed their language by creating complex light patterns with their bioluminescent scales, communicating detailed messages about territory boundaries and hunting rights. Dr. Alexei documented their tool use, dragons shaping metal in volcanic heat with precision and purpose. Young dragons solved mathematical puzzles Marcus presented, proving cognitive abilities that exceeded basic animal intelligence. Most powerfully, humans and dragons trained together. Sarah's squad learned to coordinate with dragon fire breathers to flush prey from caves. Wrench worked with dragon smiths to improve their metallurgy. Children, both human and dragon hatchlings, played together, inventing games that crossed species boundaries. The Union observers transmitted constant reports. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Dragons were not animals. They were people, but the Cathari were not ready to surrender their claim. On the 4th day, Commander Zextor himself appeared in orbit aboard a heavy mining vessel. His transmission bypassed official channels and went directly to the planet's surface. Marcus Chun, you have made your point, but evidence can be destroyed and witnesses can be silenced. I gave you a chance at survival once. Do not make me regret it. The Cathari fleet powered up weapon systems. Their target was not Marcus's ships. It was the Emberclaw nesting ground where hundreds of eggs lay protected in lava pools. If those eggs were destroyed, the clan's future would die with them. Marcus watched the tactical display and felt cold fury settle over him. They were going to kill children to protect their profits. He activated all channels, Union observers, his fleet, and the Cathari ships. Everyone would hear what he said next. 15 years ago, you calculated that an 8-year-old child had a 12% chance of survival, and you abandoned him to save time. Today you calculate that destroying a nursery full of eggs is acceptable to save money. But you forgot something in your calculations. Zextor, you forgot that survivors remember, and we do not forgive. The Cathari fired. A brilliant lance of energy shot down from orbit toward the nesting caves. Marcus's ship Firebrand launched itself into Beam's path, its reinforced shields absorbing the blast but taking catastrophic damage. Alarm screamed as the ship began losing altitude. Then something impossible happened. Scarabs released a roar that summoned every adult dragon within range. 50 dragons positioned themselves in a circle and released their fire breath simultaneously, creating a massive thermal column of superheated air. The column acted like an atmospheric shield, diffracting and weakening the next Cathari shots. Sarah Kim, piloting the damaged Firebrand, saw her opportunity. She dove through the thermal column, using its heat signature to mask her approach. The ship screamed toward the Cathari mining vessel, and at the last moment, Sarah fired the Firebrand's remaining weapons at point-blank range directly into the enemy ship's weapon batteries. The Cathari vessel's guns went offline. Debris scattered into orbit. The Union observation ship immediately transmitted an emergency ceasefire order to all vessels. What the observers had just witnessed was unprecedented. Sapient species using advanced tactical cooperation with another species. The proof was irrefutable. The Galactic Union Council held an emergency vote within hours. Pyros, 7 was declared a protected world, home to a recognized sapient species. All Cathari mining rights were permanently revoked. Commander Zextor was arrested for attempted genocide. Marcus stood on a mountain peak with Scarab beside him, watching the Cathari fleet retreat into hyperspace. His people, both human and dragon, celebrated together below. Dr. Alexei was already planning a cultural exchange program. Sarah was teaching dragon tactics to interested Union military observers. Wrench had 3 dragon apprentices learning about spacecraft engineering. Scareth rumbled a question in Draconic. Will you stay now, small fire? Or does the sky call you away again? Marcus placed his hand on her scaled foreleg. I will divide my time. 6 moons in the sky, speaking for clan and their councils. 6 moons on the earth, living as I should, with family. Cravathor approached slowly, his ancient body tired but satisfied. He spoke in a formal dialect reserved for important declarations. The human child who fell from the sky has become the bridge between earth and stars. The clan honors him. The clan thanks him. The clan claims him as eternal kin. Marcus replied in the same formal style, his voice carrying across the volcanic plains. I was left here to die. You gave me life, purpose, and belonging. Now the sky knows what I've always known. Dragons are not savage. They are wise, mighty, and worthy of respect, and they will never be abandoned again. As the sun set over the volcanic peaks, casting the world in shades of red and gold, 2 species that should have been enemies sat together as family. A human child had been thrown away like garbage, and he had returned as something greater, a bridge between worlds, a voice for the voiceless. Proof that family is not determined by blood or species, but by who stands beside you when the fires come. Scareth wrapped her wing gently around Marcus, and he leaned against her warm scales. After 15 years of fighting, surviving, and proving himself, Marcus Chin was finally truly home.